Academy. Today we have a special guest, Marquita Hartman. She is an SQL developer at a company called Computer Share. She's a 2019 alumni. Um, Welcome, Marquita. I'll
Thank
hand it over
you.
to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I just wanted to share my experience with you guys about what life has been like for me after the Tech Academy. So like you said, I attended in 2019, and yeah, I just hope you guys can take away something helpful from my presentation. Okay, so I did a lot of networking and preparation before and during the Tech Academy. So I went to as many meetups as I could, and I'm not joking, like it was probably every day, almost every night I would go to one. If I was tired or, I had a hard day, it didn't really matter. I went and I actually got a couple interviews from just meeting people, and people started remembering me from past meetups. So yeah, it's a really fun way to kind of put yourself out there and find potential job opportunities. And I even made a few friends that way. So that was kind of cool. Then the other thing I did was I bought a few coding interview books. Some of you are probably familiar with them. So the first one that's very helpful was Cracking the Coding Interview by Gail Lackman McDowell. And then the second one I bought was The Complete Software Developer's Career Guide by John Sonmez. They're pretty daunting because they're pretty thick. I definitely didn't finish them cover to cover, but I focused on the aspects of the books that would benefit me personally. So yeah, if anyone wants a link to those Amazon books, just shoot me a message on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to give those to you. Let's see. So I took some classes to learn how to be a little bit more confident and succinct during interviews. A lot of those classes were online, but I also had a friend that I met at a meetup, and he would host Google Meet sessions with new developers. And we would just go through coding challenges and mock interviews, and it's actually super fun. So if you can find someone like that, it's pretty priceless. And a lot of people in meetups are very willing to do that for you. And then the thing that I did after every interview, right when I got back to my car, before I left, I took notes on every interview I had. So I wrote down questions they asked. I went home and reviewed them, and just so I could better answer them next time. And a lot of the questions are really similar. So yeah, that's a good way to kind of come up with stories and be more prepared for those types of questions. All right, so I'll just spend a little time telling you guys about our team and what we do on a day-to-day basis at ComputerShare. So my position is associate developer. So we do database development. We code in SQL. So we use SQL Server Management Studio. And we also use Visual Studio for source control. And then we use it for other things too, which I'll show you guys in a little bit. And then we use Team Foundation Server to keep track of our work. And then we use Teams, which is very much like Slack, just to message back and forth. So my team specifically is focused on building data feeds. So it's exactly what it sounds like. We feed data to our clients. So we provide them financial information to help them make decisions based on that data. So some of the biggest clients we serve are Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Chase. And once those data feeds that we develop are in production, they are monitored 24/7 by our production support team to make sure the clients receive their data on time. So our goal is to get the data feeds out before 6 a.m. And sometimes that doesn't happen, especially with our larger data feeds like Goldman Sachs. So we have a nightly cycle that runs every night, and it pushes large amounts of data where it's needed. So, there are different folders. They have SFTPs that sweep up the data and go to the clients. And a lot of times what happens in the cycle is it gets overloaded and things fail. So there's a team that monitors it 24/7. And if we have stuff on our team that fails, we have to fix it. So yeah, we have to troubleshoot the issues for the clients, and we work in an agile manner. So if production issues come up, it really causes chaos in our sprint. Okay, so yeah, like I said before, we're agile. And the Tech Academy really provided a great foundation for this during the live project. So we have stand-up every morning, and it's a really good chance just to let your entire team know where you're at with your commitments. So I take advantage of that. It's a time to get on the same page. Even if we're all working on different things, but a lot of times we're working on the same project, just different pieces. So, if you're trying to combine multiple code into one request, or, one of your commitments is hung up in QA, or, in some other waiting period, your team is there to help you along the way, and they can even kind of push things along, put pressure on other people to kind of move it along to get it completed. So yeah, if your team is there to help you along the way, and if anyone is able to help with any roadblocks, it's a good opportunity to step in and say, hey, I can help you with that. Or, say, hey, I really need help. Help me, please. So we have retros at the end of every sprint. This is a chance to just voice your opinion of what went well, what needs to improve, and what needs to be discussed. So we also discuss any rollover commitments and why they happened for that particular sprint. And it's important to remember that retro is a safe place. So, you can voice your opinion because it really benefits the team, and everyone completely understands. And it's also an opportunity to learn more about your teammates and what their journey has been like throughout the sprint. Because every member of our team has different roles. So we have a QA person, we have a business analyst, there's 3 developers. So it's really important to kind of put yourself in their shoes so in the future what they need from you. So yeah, it's all about helping each other out. Let's see. Okay, so sprint planning. I really love sprint planning. So beforehand, we have to go through the previous sprint, and we have to roll over any commitments that did not get completed. So we kind of have to estimate the time it will take to fully complete rollovers in the next sprint. So it's just an estimated time, and your teammates will help you be realistic about how much time it will take you to be successful based on the previous sprint. So you set your development capacity and a lot for any PTO taken so that you can track your hours. And then you get new assignments, which is, I think it's really exciting. So we just go through the backlog and review what is ready for sprint and who wants to take on that assignment. And as a new developer, I really love this because you never know what new opportunities are in store, and it's pretty scary, but I really like it. So if I see a user story that looks interesting, I just go ahead and jump in. And my teammates can say, I think this is too much for you, and it's no biggie. they might also agree with you that, yeah, you should jump in and try it. And, if there's a need, if you need help with anything, they assign a dev buddy, which will add on to that person's capacity just so that it'll all work out so they have time to help you. So yeah, it's a good time to kind of take advantage of the opportunities because it'll help you grow in the end. Let's see here. Okay, so sprint review and sprint demo is a little intimidating. So our team puts together a presentation at the end of every sprint, and we invite all of our related departments to attend. So we review the stats for that sprint compared to the past ones, and then present the commitments that we were able to complete. So for the smaller stories, they're highlighted as honorable mentions, but for the bigger ones, the lead developer for that story has to speak to it and do a demo. So since I'm new, they assign me lots of big user stories. So I often have to put together a demo and present what I developed to the whole audience. It's pretty scary because upper management is there, but they really appreciate that we put this together, and it shines a really good light on our team because no other team in our department actually does this. I think it's a pretty common agile practice, but we're the only people that do this. So it's kind of exciting. And I often don't get to interact with upper management. So it's really great to answer their questions about details of my development and let them know what I'm up to with my projects. Okay, so this is Visual Studio. This is what we use it for, source control, and then we also use it to create SSIS packages, which is the image on the left. And then we use it for report definition language files, or RDL files, which is the photo on the right. So SSIS stands for SQL Server Integrated Services, and it is used for transforming data from different sources, like from an XML flat file or a flat file destination, and then it connects to a data source, which is the SQL code that we write. And an RDL works in a similar way, but it actually creates a report rather than just giving out straight data. So yeah, that's what we use Visual Studio for. Okay, so the job search. Yeah, the number one thing to do is to just follow the job placement assignments at the Tech Academy. And then whatever you can do in addition to that, whatever you think will be helpful to you, do that. So what I did was I began looking at jobs pretty early on in the program. I think about 4 months before I began the job placement course. So I wasn't necessarily applying for jobs. I was just kind of looking to see what was out there and, what companies were looking for. And I just used a spreadsheet to keep track of everything. But I put every job that I looked at and every job I applied to, I would track on the spreadsheet, just so I know, if I had applied to that job before, what they want, what they said, that kind of thing. And I also worked a lot on my resume, which is obvious, but I had several people look it over for me. So I had people who are in the industry as well as people who are not in the industry look at it. And when the time came to actually apply to jobs, I just continued the same process. So yeah, and it's really important to also follow up with every job you apply to, even if they initially say no. My experience has been almost every job I have ever gotten in my adult life has been because I just kept following up and just bugging them, because they remember you that way. And, I had several jobs in my past career where they just flat out turned me down. But I just kept following up regularly just to see what the ultimate decision would be for that position, because sometimes it takes a while for them to fill the position, even if they say no to you. And a few times they were willing to give me another chance, and I usually got job offers from those second chances. So the worst thing to happen is a definite no, and then you just move on. Don't get discouraged because it's just a numbers game. Okay, so this was taken from the actual job description for my position. It's what they expected in a junior developer at this company. It's pretty reasonable compared to the other job descriptions I had seen. They were not expecting to hire somebody with 5 years of experience just out of school. They were very realistic in what they would get with someone just finishing school. So I would say that the biggest asset as a newbie in the industry is to always be enthusiastic and excited about learning from your teammates and growing every day. So, I always ask questions, even if I think I'm being annoying. Your team would rather have you ask questions and do something right rather than clam up and end up making a mistake. So it's important to be just a good team player and to emphasize that in the interview. You really want to highlight that, you want to work with people and you want to learn and know what they know. And yeah, you can utilize the team as a resource too if you get stuck. So if you're on a good team, they'll be more than willing to help you out. And since I'm new, I make a lot of mistakes. And so asking for help can be kind of intimidating, but it's far better to just ask questions than to be afraid of bugging people too often. Okay. Okay, so the interview process, I talked with the recruiter first. She just asked non-technical questions. She wanted to know if I was excited about the opportunity. Am I personable? Can I be a team player? And then just salary expectations and things like that. And then I had a phone interview. So these were more technical questions to see what projects and what coding experience I've had in the past. And they're also trying to gauge again if you're willing to take on difficult tasks and learn and be excited about them. Yeah, and then they invited me for an in-person interview. And I thought this was actually easier than the phone interview because you get to meet your potential teammates and you have the opportunity to connect with them. So the most important quality that they were looking for was someone who would be collaborative and open to learning and growing. And it's also an opportunity for you to see if you like them. And then, so I sent a thank you email to the recruiter, and then I followed up a little while later because I didn't hear back. And she just let me know where they were at with the interviews. And this application was probably like my 100th one. And at times I did feel discouraged, but I remained diligent and I ended up getting a job offer. So that was really awesome. And then this was a bigger company, so they do things like background check. So I had to give fingerprints and take a drug test. And not all companies do this, but it's really good to prepare for this just in case. So they actually did not put me through a technical interview. I was pretty open from the beginning about my technical experience, so that was pretty much off the table. It wasn't a factor for them at that point, which is very unusual for a developer role. So the goal for this company is to hire people that are new to the industry and that are willing to stay with the company and kind of learn the ins and outs. And then you can become a valuable member. However, in previous interviews that I had, I was asked to do technical interviews, and this was probably my weakest area. Um, so, like I said before, I read the book Cracking the Coding Interview, which is great. They have a lot of coding challenges in there. So this is a huge help, and I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get good at the coding challenges because they're pretty difficult, especially in an interview when you don't know what's coming. And even after getting a job, it's really important to practice them and just kind of stay sharp. Okay, so my first day of work, first thing in the morning was orientation, and that lasted pretty much the entire morning. Then my supervisor came and got me, and he introduced me to the team. They showed me my desk. The onboarding process was kind of a roller coaster. Um, so I guess a good example would be, I'm familiar with Visual Studio, but once I connected to the code base for the company, I had no idea what I was doing. So luckily, I had teammates that just sat with me the whole day and helped me get all set up. So we have about 45 different servers that we work from, and they each contain roughly 20 different databases. So as a developer, I needed to get familiar with all of it quickly because I need to know where to find the code that I need for projects. So with all that going on that day and more, I also had to attend all of the daily meetings scheduled for my team that day. I didn't know how to look at my calendar, work my email. I didn't know any of that. So it was pretty crazy. And I feel like I'm still kind of in the onboarding process. So I have a training meeting every morning with the other developers where it's just focused on me. So, it's a designated time to just focus on roadblocks that I'm encountering in a more detailed way. It's super helpful. So I feel lucky that they take a few minutes out of their busy day to give me a hand. And I actually asked for this meeting. It's not a normal thing that they do, but I requested it from my boss. And, if you ask for things, most likely they'll make it work for you. Let's see. And then, so my first impression of the environment in the office is it's a giant office building. It reminded me very much of the movie Office Space. So we all had our little cubicles and everyone's typing away. For those first few weeks, everything just looked the same to me on the floor, and I got lost a lot trying to find meeting rooms. And then the culture of the workplace, ours is extremely friendly. The times where I would need help getting lost trying to find meeting rooms, I just asked whoever was around if they could point me in the right direction. And they actually took time to walk me there to make sure I found what I was looking for. And that was a good time for me to introduce myself and get to know more people on my floor. So this wasn't quite the idea I had in my head when I first started coding school. My first job, I expected to work, in a trendy office with ping pong tables. But this has been a really excellent learning experience, and it's a really good stepping stone for me. So I'm very happy to work for this company. And, I'm really glad that I said yes to the opportunity because ultimately it just makes me a better programmer. Okay, so this is kind of obvious. We all know this going into software development that it's very hard. It's hard every day. Um, My teammates were very transparent about what being new to this company would be like. They said that a year into this job, I may kind of know what is going on, maybe. I've been here for about 9 months, and I know kind of a little bit of what is going on. Yeah, so it's easy to get caught up in what you're doing and forget to stay on top of other learning experiences. We do work with SQL, but it is important for me to practice other languages outside of work so that I can remain fresh on everything. So yeah, I continue to attend meetups, I guess until COVID, and practice my coding challenges when I could. And yeah, as I said before, we work in 2-week sprints. So every commitment I'm assigned in a sprint is very difficult. Even if I think I know what I'm doing and I've done it before, there are always unexpected roadblocks every time. And we have development capacity that we set because our days are not just straight development, but they fill up our development capacity completely full during a sprint. And we're expected to finish our commitments. And then you have to take into account things like meetings and answering emails and paperwork, trying to get your code approved through all the different channels. So it's kind of a whirlwind every day. But the one thing I can say is I haven't once regretted my decision to change careers. There are so many things that I love about my job. So I get to code almost all day, every day. My schedule is super flexible. So right now I'm working from home because of COVID. Most everybody at the company is working from home. And the company is really good to their employees. And I'm on a team that always has my back. So yeah, I feel very lucky to have my job. Okay, so speaking of the job being tough, it's inevitable that you'll make mistakes, and you'll make a lot of mistakes. Recently, I made a sort of serious mistake. So as developers, we do not have access to production, which is a very good thing because we don't want to be messing things up. There can't be a bunch of people in there except the production support team. I was recently working on a project, and I just wanted to be proactive before it went live the next week. So I went ahead and just merged the package I was working on up to the production branch, thinking, well, this definitely can't go into production yet because I needed to give a specific deployment number for it to actually go in. But unbeknownst to me, that particular process sweeps everything out of the production branch and runs it through the cycle at night. So, of course, it failed and it held up the cycle. And someone on production support got a phone call at 3 a.m. saying they need to look into this. And what they ended up having to do was pull the original package from the old server that we are not on right now, which is a real pain. So I woke up to many emails asking what the heck happened. So I first had to explain to my boss what I did and why. Then I had to explain to the team during our stand-up what happened. Then we had to have another detailed meeting after that to discuss how to avoid this in the future. So luckily my boss was very understanding and he knew my intentions were good. And he actually didn't know that that could happen without a deployment number. So he was kind of surprised. And at a company like ours, it's policy that when a mistake like that happens involving production, all the related departments need to know all the details of everything and who was responsible. So an email got sent out and everyone knew it was me. So that was a great day. And even the senior developers make mistakes. Our lead developer last week made a pretty big oopsie that was bigger than mine. And he went on display in an email just like I did. And it's pretty embarrassing. And it took him a while to recover from it. But, everyone understands, even though he was pretty sad about it. But it's like you just kind of have to take it as a learning experience and, do your best to correct them and learn from them. And try your very best not to do it again. Okay, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
I've got a couple follow-up questions. Go ahead, Moylan.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry. So, yeah, Moylan, that's just a little tag phrase. This is Jeremiah. I'm also a previous grad of the Tech Academy.
Cool.
But as a SQL developer, I see that you're using SSIS. How much actual SQL code do you think you type in a week or on a regular basis?
So it's kind of weird because we very rarely do projects from scratch because everything that we do has already been done. So we work off of templates, which sounds kind of easy, but it's pretty difficult. So I would say in a week, couple hours a day. We have our capacity set at 5 hours, and I usually go over that. So it's quite a bit during the week of just straight coding.
Nice, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Marquita, I want to ask you about your interviews previous to the one that you did to get this position. What kind of mistakes did you make in those earlier interviews and all phases of the interview that you could kind of help these students and graduates to avoid making in the future?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, the one that really sticks out was he just had a very different way of going about a coding challenge. And it was related to SQL because he had me think of ways I could connect different things and what I would need for those connections, which is a join. And so I guess I would say just like look at all your possibilities. Don't just focus on like one language or assume that they're trying to ask you, something. Just kind of think of all the possibilities and try not to get blocked up, which I know is kind of hard. But I was just thinking along the lines of not SQL. So I wish I could have thought of that.
Is that in with the interview you had to get this position?
No.
This is an older. Okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you about without obviously disclosing your salary to us, when they asked your expectations for your salary, what advice would you give students for the number that you estimated? Was it similar to the number on the job application? And do you think that there could be there could be issues with asking for too much or too little in the end?
Yeah, so they actually didn't specify on the job description. The recruiter asked me, and I had a number in my head because it's such a wide range. Like if you Google it, it's like it just depends on how, different things. But I had a number in my head, and she said, well, we have a minimum that we have to pay our developers when they're first starting out. And so I picked a number lower than that. And then I said, oh. And so she told me what it was. And I went 10,000 above that because I wanted some wiggle room. And I got about 5,000 above that. So I would just say, like, don't sell yourself short. Aim for higher because then you can always negotiate. They're not going to be offended, I don't think.
You don't think it's an issue to ask for too much and then they're going to talk? That's great. Awesome.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I see a question in the chat from Jesse that asked, how long did it take you to find your first job?
A month.
A month?
So, yeah. But I know that it can take a while. I expected 6 months to a year or longer. So I just had that kind of in my head to expect that. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good time period. Sometimes it takes longer, but it
Yeah.
sounds like your persistence, and you said you sent out about 100 applications, and that's
Actually, I sent out over 200, I think, but this was about around 100, this job.
okay.
So yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're saying it took them quite a while to eventually get back to you. You had sent out 100 before they even got back to you.
Yeah, I think I had this interview. It was November, maybe early November, but I had also been looking at jobs and kind of applying here and there, kind of before the job placement program. So I kind of had a little, lead, but I didn't want to kind of jump right into it because I wanted to wait until the job placement program. But I did have a few, maybe like 50, 40 or probably 40, I would say, but not all applied to, like looked at, and then some applied to. So. Mm-hmm.
Looks like Catherine has a question as well.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine, do you want to go ahead?
Hi.
Hi.
When you said that you spend about 5 hours a day coding for this company, is that just for SQL or do you SQL, or do you actually use other coding languages?
Yeah, so this position is just SQL. Yeah, we just use SQL. Yeah, there's other teams that use JavaScript for the front end, but we're just back end.
Okay, so you access databases all day long and try to get the data using SQL, and do you do reports, or how do you dump that data into something that they need?
Yeah, so we do reports. That's about half of what we do, depending on what the client wants. But we also just do straight data feeds, which spit out Excel files or text files, CSV files, whatever they want.
Okay, so you retrieve it from database, and then you do a little bit of something with it, and then you dump it back into an Excel or some type of file that is accessible to everybody.
Yeah, well, okay. It's accessible. It's accessible to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, I'm going to take the opportunity. This is Jeremiah again.
Hi.
So, hello. As you were going through the boot camp, getting exposed to Python, JavaScript, C#, all those other different elements of coding, did you have a favorite or a certain ideal as to what you wanted to do after graduation? And
yeah, I did.
Has this kind of aligned with that at all?
So I really wanted to work with JavaScript doing front end and some design. But I didn't expect to code in SQL as a profession at all. But it was kind of surprising. It's kind of nice to kind of expand it because SQL was kind of the missing piece. I enjoyed it during the Tech Academy. I really did, but I didn't practice it a lot on my own. So.
Yeah, thank you. I noticed in my experience that I'm actually working with an area that I most feared during the programming. That's C#.
Oh, yeah.
That's my bread and butter. But like you, I love SQL, and I've been starting to feel a little pigeonholed a little bit in my tasks, and so I've been looking at SQL development. And when I saw this tech talk, I was like, awesome! This is so timely. So thank you for that. For that feedback.
Yeah, no problem.
Catherine, did you have another question?
No.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Of course. Yeah, I had another question, Marquita. So you talked about how you followed up with all of your applications and the importance of that. How many, what percentile of those applications you sent out do you think you actually followed up with, and what did those follow-ups look like?
So I tried to do every single one just down the list. Sometimes I couldn't get into contact with anybody. A lot of times it would just be like front desk person, if there was one. Emails I sent out to their, if I could find a contact email, I would do that. It was really great for the few that I actually knew somebody that worked at the company, because I just got contact information from them. Yeah, and a lot of phone calls. Some of them worked, I could actually talk to a person, but yeah, it was pretty difficult to follow up for a lot of them.
How would you say your experience in terms of those phone calls went? Would you say you got a pretty good response rate? Were you able to get a hold of somebody that was happy to talk to you and pass your information along?
It was about half and half, I think. Yeah, some people would just be like, oh yeah, I'll pass it along. But some people actually were like, oh yeah, thank you for following up. I will pass your information along. So yeah, it was about half and half.
Great. And you followed in the position that you ended up getting. Did you followed up to get that position?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have a question actually. For very, very large companies, how do you get names of person or phone numbers or even email addresses? Seems to me that if the company is smaller, it's easier because they have a receptionist or because there is somebody who's going to pick up the phone. But I've been looking at Amazon and Microsoft because that's what we have here locally, and it's a maze, and you don't get anybody on the phone.
Yeah, that's so true. So when I applied for this position, I didn't have a chance to figure out how to follow up. They called me very soon after I applied. So I had the recruiter's contact information. So I guess that was kind of lucky, because I wouldn't know how to follow up with this company.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the use of recruiters is essential, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Was this the company's personal recruiter, or was this a?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask about your LinkedIn experience and how you, if LinkedIn was a helpful resource for you when you were in your job search, and how you use that to network or to find positions.
Yeah, so it was super helpful. I think I used LinkedIn more than anything else. And the people that I would meet at meetups, I would always get their LinkedIn information. And I had, I think, 3 or 4 interviews where I knew the person and I followed up with them and I said, hey, this position that you know of, can you kind of put a word in for me? And yeah, so LinkedIn has been great because I love the messaging that they have available. So I use that most of the time.
Great. Did you find a lot of job opportunities on there? Were you applying to positions you found on there, or what was your main source? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. LinkedIn was my main source. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
I also had a question. Did you do any other research on the side of, we have these typical job boards, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, all that. Did you do any research on the side about companies in your local area, or any sort of outside research?
I tried. Yeah, so for most of them, they have, detailed websites of what they do. And but for ComputerShare, I couldn't find hardly anything on Google for them. I tried and I thought it was just kind of like, well, I'm going to apply to this company that I've never heard of and they probably won't get back to me. But yeah, I would do research and try and see what was out there. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Does anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask? Anything related? I'll go for it.
Maybe one more thing. So back in March, when everybody got pretty much laid off, I participated into a seminar from my university that was, people in transition, career change, and all that stuff. And the lady who presented was a career coach, and she highly recommended that we focus on about 40 companies only and know them well and only apply to those companies in terms of job. Would you agree with that, or do we need to be a little bit more pragmatic?
That's something that I never thought about, but it really makes sense, because then your scope isn't so broad and you can pay attention to what's going on with each of those companies, rather than just kind of having a spreadsheet of 200 people and you don't know what's going on really. So I don't know. That's something that I've never thought about. Yeah.
I think the importance in that is that you are, keeping track of these 40 companies that you're applying to, and you're following up, you're writing them thank you letters. It's a lot easier to keep track of 40 companies, and that's the whole, when we get to the job placement portion of the program, we give you an employee search log, a method of keeping track of, and it sounds like you had your own sort of log of keeping track of things. And I think that's the really important thing, is keeping track of where you're applying to, making sure you're organized and professional about this experience, because it's really, really vital.
It is. I totally agree.
But your company would not have made that 40, that list of 40, because there was nothing on it, right?
Yeah, no. Yeah, this one was kind of way up there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I wanted to ask one more question, unless anybody else wanted to step in here. It was related to your, previous employment versus this. You made this career change, and from one career that you were in for about 8 years into a new one. What kind of struggles did you find with, making a major career change, and what kind of advice can you give to somebody who's also making a major career change?
Yeah, so I was working full time. I was actually 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. So during the week, I didn't have too much time to put into coding, but I tried, and I would go to meetups when I could. I wish, though, before coming to the Tech Academy, that I had done more coding, started earlier. I don't know, like put in more, knew more, because going right into a coding boot camp with minimal experience is really tough. So I don't know how I would have done that differently, but looking back, that's something that I would have definitely tried to put more time into. So that was pretty difficult, working full time and trying to get experience on my own. So.
Did you know pretty early on that you wanted to develop or transition into a developer position?
So it was 2 years before I actually applied to the Tech Academy. We had to, I wanted to get coding experience in those 2 years, figure out the financial side with our household going down to one income. So yeah, those 2 years were kind of crazy, but. Mm-hmm.
So that segues into my last question, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So based off of your expectations before the tech industry and with your experience in it so far, where do you see like a year from now or 5 years from now looking?
Oh, that's a good question.
And that's 2020 craziness aside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Gosh, I juggle this because I really want to stay with ComputerShare. I want to give it a chance. I want to get good at my job. I want them to know, they took a chance on me, so I want to give them a chance. But at the same time, I can't stop thinking about, working with JavaScript and front end. So I try and do that in my spare time. But yeah, I don't know. 5 years, I want to say I don't think I'll be with ComputerShare. I don't know, though. It's kind of a toss-up. I'm not sure.
But still in tech and still.
Yeah, for sure. Nice. Yeah.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. If anybody has any other questions, we got a couple minutes left. I want to thank Marquita again for joining us. This was incredibly informative. It's always great to hear these success stories of our students and our graduates. Mm-hmm. This is a really valuable experience for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. I'll put up my LinkedIn here.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you. So there's my LinkedIn. If anybody wants to shoot me a message or has any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer. This was really great. Thanks for the Tech Academy for having me. This is really
absolutely
awesome.
This is a pleasure. And
yeah.
We this is our our most valuable sort of tech talk in a way. To see these success stories and to see you enjoying your career and getting value out of it and overcoming these struggles is really because it is landing your first tech job can be taxing. It could take time, and it is it is rewarding in the end. So that's very fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, Thank you again to everybody for coming. Thank you, Marquita, our speaker. I hope this was valuable to everybody, and we hope to see you all at next week's Tech Talk, or next, maybe not next week, but the next one we have.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marquita.
Thanks. All right. Let's see here. Stop presenting.